You're watching KTN Prime on KTN News, where you get the whole story. We thank you very much for making the time to stay with us on our bulletin tonight, this special edition when we saw the 78-year-old pontiff energetically jogging down the steps as he arrived aboard what is known as Shepherd 1. That's that Alitalia flight that arrived at about 20 minutes to 5 o'clock, 20 minutes ahead of schedule. So this is definitely a pope, like we're saying, keeping papal time and not African time. Welcome back to the program. We will be focusing on his trip in the country and indeed that packed itinerary that we showed you just a short while ago. He's a very busy man during his 6-day tour of the African continent that has now began officially with his arrival in Kenya. Now, of course, one of the main stops of that tour will be that mass that will be held at 10 a.m. tomorrow at the University of Nairobi grounds. The graduation square has been transformed. It's raining a little bit tonight in Nairobi, but many are hoping that the weather will be agreeable and amenable tomorrow morning as that mass begins. Like we said, he will be meeting various religious leaders, which he has done at State House this evening. He should hopefully any time now be retiring for the evening and then begin again that heavy schedule tomorrow. So let's link up now with John Alanamu, who's at the University of Nairobi grounds, to just tell us more about what is going on there. John?
Yes, it is raining quite heavily this evening. Hopefully it doesn't do the same tomorrow morning at the graduation pavilion here at Nairobi.
John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Yvonne. Can you hear me?
All right, we seem to be having challenges with John. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Yvonne. Can you hear me now? Yvonne?
Talk to me. Namu, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Yvonne.
All right. Carry on and tell us, what the weather is looking like and the grounds that are there. We know security is tight and all the arrangements are in place. Many are hoping that the weather will hold up tomorrow.
Well, yes, that's the hope of everybody here and everybody who would want to attend this mass tomorrow morning here at the Nairobi graduation pavilion. But as you can see from behind me, there's just been a short lull in the raining this evening, but it's been pouring down in buckets, making for a potentially messy morning tomorrow with soggy grounds in the open air as Pope Francis will be celebrating his mass here. We've been waiting here for a few short minutes for the weather to clear up, to see whether we can carry out a couple of interviews and get a few insights into the importance of the visit of Pope Francis. Of course, it cannot be understated just how important it is for Pope Francis to visit Africa at this time. Right now, I'd like to call in Gilbert Ogutu, Professor Gilbert Ogutu, my guest this evening, of course, who's been analyzing the events happening here, of course, yet to happen rather. Good evening. Thanks again for joining us this evening,
Good evening,
Professor. Now, tomorrow is going to be a fairly significant event, of course, the celebration of the Mass and the altar itself being prepared. Let's speak a little bit about Pope Francis's legacy in Africa, or the expected legacy of a pontiff this important to the world visiting Africa this time around.
Now, before we talk about the legacy in Africa, we would like to lift Pope Francis from Rome. Why Rome? And why Pope? This direction we get from the Bible. Jesus asked his disciples, "You are the people talking to the others outside there. Whom do they think I am?" And very quickly they gave answers. Some say you are Elijah, some say you are one of the prophets, and so on and so forth. Then he looked at them and smiled and asked them, "But what about you? Whom do you think I am?" Everybody was silent except Peter, who put up his hand and said, "You are Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus told Peter, who was then Simon, Simon, from now you will be called Peter, meaning rock. And on this rock I will build my church. So Peter became the first pope and head of the church, community of believers. So we get Francis from there. And as we did yesterday, I would like to start by taking this rare opportunity of welcoming Holy Father to Kenya and to University of Nairobi in particular.
All right.
And thanking our leaders, particularly our president, for the warm welcome they accorded His Holiness Pope Francis.
All right, Professor, to the legacy now. There are a lot of people, a lot of expectant crowds, not just here but across the continent, and the eyes of the world will be faced at Kenya, expecting a very tailored message, as he has done in different parts of the world that he has visited. What kind of message are we looking at in terms of expectation from Pope Francis? It's tough to postulate, but perhaps maybe we can look at the situation that portends here. Pope
Francis is only 2 years in the pontificate.
Yes.
We have to go back to Second Vatican Council, which relaxed a lot of doctrines of the Catholic Church. But leaving the Second Vatican Council aside, we come to African Synod, which was held in Rome, and where the African bishops, although it was held at the Vatican in Rome, it was an African synod. And issues affecting the church in Africa were discussed at length. For nearly a month, our great church leaders were in Rome. And
to the issues, what specific things were they discussing, if you could enumerate about 3 as we wind up?
Well, one of the most interesting things which was discussed at length were African beliefs and practices, which led to this idea of inculturation. Can we have a church made in Africa? Must we use the doctrines and norms and values which had been there for centuries? For example, we know that the pillars of the Catholic Church are mainly 2, the Bible and the doctrines, the teachings of the church over time. And some of these were found to be unacceptable or unpalatable or restricting people from being full members of the church. And so our church leaders, bishops and so forth, during this synod, they looked into issues that made life difficult for believers.
All right, I think that's what we're going to have to hold our discussion this evening. So much to discuss yet again. As with yesterday, we're going to have to carry this discussion forward, and hopefully until after Pope Francis celebrates his Mass tomorrow, and discuss those doctrinal issues and see whether that's going to be part of his agenda here in Kenya, in Uganda, and of course in Africa. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We'll expect to be joining you again and to mine into the knowledge that you have this evening. Thank you very much, Professor Ogutu. We'll just go back to a break here on KTN News. Of course, our news rolls on, our news coverage rolls on. Jeff Koinange is going to be live in the next hour with Reverend Timothy Joya to continue a discussion about a religious discussion about Kenya and Pope Francis's visit. So stay tuned to KTN News. My name is John Alanamu. KTN News continues in a few moments. Back in a moment.
Some good news for consumers tonight. The price of most maize flour brands has come down below 100 shillings a packet as the market responds to increased supply of the raw material following the onset of harvesting in the North Rift. The falling prices come as a relief to most households who are grappling with high prices as late as last month, when the cost of a 2-kilogram packet retailed at an average of 112 shillings. The drop in prices has been precipitated by the start of the harvest season in Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu, which make up Kenya's grain basket region. Maize prices have a big effect on inflation in Kenya's economy, where it is a staple food and accounts for a significant share of poor household budgets. Inflation stood at 6.72% in October compared to 5.97% in September, mainly due to the high cost of food. Another quick break here on KTN Prime. We'll be back with the day's sports news.
KTN Business Today. KTN Weather.
The hashtag we're using throughout our papal, throughout the Pope's visit in Kenya and indeed in Africa is papal tour, so keep them coming in. George Warui says in 2015, Kenya is blessed with high-profile visitors, Shindwe corruption to Songe Mbele.